what if many of these legendary tales actually have roots in real events? In recent years, some scholars have pointed out that before the invention of writing, myths and legends were the only way people recorded history. These stories were passed down orally, generation after generation, over dozens, even hundreds of retellings. The actual historical events slowly transformed into what we now call legends. For example, the esteemed Lucen believed the tale of Kangji creating characters might hold truth. He suggested this Kangji was likely an ancient court historian, tasked with collecting and organizing written symbols when writing first emerged. But as the story passed from person to person, it spread far and wide, and his role became legendary. People mythologized him, and over time, he became the figure we know from the legends. Not to mention a story about ordinary mortals. No matter how normal it was at first, when enough people talk, the wildest rumors take hold. Through people's wildly imaginative retellings, ghosts, gods, and monsters were born. I'm Lucy. Today, let's talk about a particularly eerie and unusual, yet completely non-supernatural version of the legend of the White Snake. A young man in the robes of the #1 scholar entered a dilapidated, isolated pagoda. The tower was covered in spider webs, teeming with snakes and rats. He climbed to the top floor, where a gaunt, ghostly, pale girl sat motionless. The girl, her expression blank, slowly turned her head. An old woman, her voice hoarse, asked, "Who are you?" "I am Zumenjo, your son. Ever since I was a child, they never let me enter the pagoda. Now that I've attained the rank of #1 scholar, they finally allowed me in." "Mother, I had no idea you were suffering in a place like this." The old woman rose and looked at the young man's neck. Seeing us in a bar birthmark clearly there, she was overjoyed. "It really is my son." Suddenly, the old woman feigned a ferocious expression and said, "You don't know yet. I am a monster. A snake spirit." "Mother, I don't believe that. Those are—" A young man burst frantically into the young lady by Sejun's private chambers. It was the second concubine. She was the one having the affair. Unexpectedly, her father returned home, and with him was his close friend, local monk, Fahai. Maybe he was just panicked and lost, or maybe this was his plan all along. But the man forced his way inside, and the master of the house discovered him right there in his daughter's room. The second concubine immediately turned on the girl. She said, "How could an unmarried young woman do something so disgraceful to our family's honor?" Then she pretended to be concerned, adding, "Please, master, try to be patient. A public scandal would look so bad for us." Master Bai probably thought to himself, "She's just the daughter of a deceased wife. She's insignificant. If she dies, she dies. I cannot let him tarnish the reputation of the garrison commander of Hangzhou. Guards, keep watch over the young lady. I will decide what to do with you after I have deliberated." Zhao King, Bai Suzian's personal maid, said in confusion. The man who just hid in the young lady's room had been staying in the second concubine's quarters for quite some time. How could the master not know the truth? And yet he's blaming our young lady for it. Before long, a servant brought in an exquisite jar, but inside was red, crowned crane poison. Bai Sezun looked helplessly at the deadly substance. She had to take this poison before daybreak. All of this was on Fahaya's orders. She walked to the window, gazing out at the moon, and whispered to herself, "Mother, please wait for me. Your poor, unfortunate daughter." Just then, the second concubine rushed in. "Things have gone this far," she said, "and the master is still furious. Miss, it might be best for you to hide away for a while. Once his anger subsides, you can return." Zhao King, her maid, also urged her, "Miss, this is just a temporary measure. Please, We should go. I, Shao King, will serve you for life, my lady. The second concubine then gave Bai Sejun a large sum of money. The night was dead quiet, with only the occasional sound of a dog barking somewhere in the distance. Bai Sejun and Shao King fled under the cover of darkness that night, with no other choice. They took shelter in the long, abandoned Kaogong temple outside the city, one day. A group of young men passing by sought refuge from the rain in the temple. There were rumors that this crumbling place had been haunted lately, women's voices whispering during the day, and faint, flickering ghost lights after dark. Since it was the Qingming festival, most of the men grew frightened and left. But one young man stayed behind. He walked straight inside, lit a fire to dry his soaked clothes, and gazed at the rain dripping from the eaves, quietly reciting poetry. Suddenly, a soft cough came from behind the shrine. Startled, the young man coughed back to steady his nerves, but still he rose to his feet and murmured, "So there really are spirits here." Cautiously, he moved toward the back of the shrine. The dim room flickered with faint, ghostly lights. Now, terrified, he stumbled back a few steps. Then, gathering his courage, he stepped into the house behind the shrine. "Who are you? What are you doing here, spying on us? Who are you people? How did you end up living here? How can you be human? And you're here as refugees. How long have you been here?" "About 2 weeks now. Sorry to disturb you." "Oh, our young lady has fallen ill. She's running a fever." "Our young lady has fallen ill? Is there a good doctor here in Linjing? What seems to be the problem?" "She's probably just a bit depressed, and she caught a chill. If you don't mind me saying, I work in the pharmacy, so I know a little about medicine. Why don't I come take a look with you?" "Perfect. Let me ask the young lady first." Bai Sejun gave a slight nod and agreed. After the young man examined her, he gave them some medicine. When all was done, she stepped outside and waited politely under the eaves for the rain to stop. The maid Shao King observed the young man. He seemed kind and handsome, and he didn't seem to have any ill intentions toward the two of them, two women alone and vulnerable. Zhao King found him reasonable, gentle, and refined as jade, standing beneath the eaves as the sky began to clear. Thinking of her young lady, alone and suffering after all that had happened, she took it upon herself to go ask the young man his name and whether he was married. She then went back to persuade Bai Sejun. But Bai Sejun replied, "Someone with my fate, who can't return home. Who can't acknowledge her own father? Such a thing is simply impossible." Shao King said, "You mustn't think like this." Through their conversation, she learned that the young man was named Zushan, that both his parents had passed away, and that he currently lived with his elder sister and her husband. Bai Sejun gazed helplessly out the window at the peach blossoms in full bloom, but it was utterly battered by the fine, drizzling green rain. Shao King walked in, beaming. "This is a match made in heaven." "The moment I asked," she agreed. I also told her not to pry into the young lady's background, and she accepted that too. Bai Sejun showed neither joy nor sorrow, just a faint trace of melancholy. "Is this really how my own wedding is supposed to be? So rushed and simple?" Zhao King tried to comfort her. "Miss, you should try to see the bright side. This is a happy occasion." A few days later, at Zushan's sister's home, Zhu Zhaorong was anxiously waiting for her younger brother's return, restless as an ant on a hot pan. Her husband, on the other hand, felt a wave of relief. That brother-in-law of his was always lounging around, and eating for free. Good riddance, if he never came back. Then suddenly, a voice called out, "Mr. Zhu is back." "Yes, back." Zhao King greeted Zushan as he walked in. Seeing how radiant and refreshed he looked, she remarked, "Mr. Zhu, you must have come into some fortune. Even your clothes are brand new." "I've gotten married, sis," he replied. His sister pressed. Which family is the girl from? I can't say, said Zushen. I promised my wife I wouldn't pry into her background. Zushen's brother-in-law scoffed. You've been scammed, haven't you? Zhu Xuex replied, How could I be scammed? Look at all this. My wife gave it to me. She wants me to open a shop. The brother-in-law said, I don't know about that. There have been burglaries recently at several wealthy households in that area. The authorities are investigating. I think this stuff of yours is of very questionable origin. It looks highly suspicious, Sean quickly said. I guarantee these are my wife's own belongings. The brother-in-law reached out to pick up the money to examine it. But Zushan blocked his hand. He always remembered his promise to Bai Sizian and refused to reveal any information to his sister and brother-in-law. So the matter escalated and was reported to the authorities. Bailiffs came to the house and took Zushan away. Afraid that his newlywed wife would be frightened, and worried that Shouqing and Bai Sijian might be disturbed by the officers, Zushan gave a note to the steward before leaving. He asked the steward to deliver this note to the Keagong temple in the suburbs. Sure enough, the officers searched K. But there wasn't a single person inside the temple. Just like always, it was nothing but a rundown, empty temple. One of the bailiffs remarked, Mr. Zhu, it sounds like you've run into a ghost. This reeks of dark magic. The magistrate saw that Zushan couldn't explain where the money came from, or even who his wife was. So he sentenced Zushan to exile in Suzhou. Before being led away, Zushan shot a resentful look at his brother-in-law. This is all you're doing, he said. When Bai Sizian and Shaking got the news, they went to Suzhou early to wait for Zushan, so they could all be together again. Later, the two of them opened a pharmacy in Suzhou, called Bohitang. Zushan was a skilled physician, and his medicines were fairly priced. And she had Bai Sijian there to help her, woman who could snap a 10-coin stack into. The pharmacy's business was surprisingly good. Zushan and Bai Sijian lived a very happy life there for a time. But every now and then, Bai Sijian would still ask Zushan, Husband, do you ever miss Hangzhou? And Zushan comforted his wife, saying, They always say up above there's heaven. Down below there's Suzhou and Hangzhou. Aren't Suzhou and Hangzhou just the same? Besides, being with you, my dear wife, feels like heaven to me no matter where we are. The two of them thought about the upcoming Dragon Boat Festival in a few days, so they decided to buy some wine to celebrate. Business at the Bohitang pharmacy was booming, without even realizing it. They were stealing all the business from the shop across the street. The owner of that rival pharmacy was at his wits' end every single day. He could see his business getting worse day by day. He just couldn't go on like this. One of his clerks came over and told him, This man named Zhu is wanted for robbery. And his wife, Bai Sizian. Well, the rumor is she's some kind of monster from the Keagong temple. The evening of the Dragon Boat Festival found Zushan drinking rice wine at home with Bai Sizian, his mood heavy and quiet. Memories of the past began creeping into his mind. With a sigh, he finally spoke, My dear wife, you don't truly love me. If you did, since we are already husband and wife, why didn't you ever tell me where you came from? It's my fault. I did this to you. Bai Sizian began to cry. But she knew she couldn't tell him about her past, because she was terrified that Zushan would abandon her. She was also terrified that her powerful father would come after them again. Seeing his wife in tears, Zushan's heart ached all over again. He could only comfort her, saying, Don't cry, my love. If you don't wish me to know, I want to ask. It is just, today as events have left me deeply troubled, that is all. After moving from Suzhou to Zhenjiang, the Bohitang pharmacy was still open, but business wasn't as good as before. Bai Sizian couldn't help worrying that Zushan might resent her. and Zushan was just miserable, lost in his own thoughts. "I really don't want to stay here," he muttered to himself. "But where else can we possibly go? Thinking of my sister back in Hangzhou, and remembering all the little grudges she held against me while I was living under her roof, I just had to sigh. I truly have a home I can't return to." But then the temple gates opened, and Fahai walked out with the old master by own old friend. Xiaoqing, who had served them tea earlier, was thrown out. When they returned home, Bai Cezin couldn't help worrying. She asked Zushan, "My husband, if someone tried to turn you against me, would you abandon me?" Zushan comforted her. "We've been together for over 3 years now. How could I ever leave you?" Gazing at her gentle husband, Bai Cezin murmured to herself, "The only one I can rely on now is you. Please, don't overthink it. Your health is what matters most." Just then, an informant came in and said there was an old monk outside insisting on seeing Master Zhu. Before Bai Cezin could even respond, Zushan rushed out impulsively to meet this so-called eminent monk from Hangzhou. He was tricked by Fahai and lured to Jinshan Temple. Zushan never came back that night, and Bai Cezin didn't sleep a wink. "To protect your father's reputation, I had no choice but to claim you were a snake spirit in disguise. You know, your father and I were the closest of friends." He's still holding on to that belief. Even if Zushan saw you now, all he'd feel is fear, not love. Xiaoqing said bitterly. "What a heartless man. Not a shred of gratitude. He's no better than an animal." Bai Cezin said wearily, "Xiaoqing, you're wrong about him again. He doesn't even see us as human anymore." If it weren't for the child she was carrying, Bai Cezin would have ended her own life, thinking of the baby growing inside her. She returned to Hangzhou and settled in the rundown Keagong Temple. She held on to a faint hope. If Zushan still cherished their past love, he might come back to this place to find her. As her delivery date drew closer, Zushan still hadn't come. One day, while strolling by Westlake with Xiaoqing, she said, "This is just how it was when I first met Zushan. Peach blossoms were in full bloom. But now, everything is shrouded in mist. Everything has changed." Suddenly, near the broken bridge at Westlake, they spotted a familiar figure. "Look, isn't that Zushan?" Xiaoqing went to test Zushin's feelings. He was utterly shocked to see her. "Xiaoqing, what are you doing here? Where is your mistress?" Shaking, her face full of hatred, lied to him. "It's all because of you. She's taken her own life." Hearing this, Zushin's face fell into complete despair. Thinking of the wife who had shared his life through hardship and their unborn child, he was utterly consumed by despair. Wanting only to end his suffering, he threw himself from the bridge. Xiaoqing couldn't help but let out a laugh at the sight of him. "Slow down, sir. Don't be so quick to die. Your lady is right here." Zushan followed where she was pointing, and saw his wife, very woman he had been dreaming of day and night. That day, Fahai had deceived Zushan completely. And he couldn't stop thinking about how Bai Cezin had always refused to tell him about her past. In a moment of confusion, all the memories from the past 3 years came flooding back. Overwhelmed with guilt for his own hesitation and suspicion toward his wife, he broke down in tears. He ran out desperately to search for her, but by then, she was already gone. He kept searching for her, on and off, for another 3 months. Thinking of the time I spent boating on Westlake with my wife, I found myself drawn back here. Zushan told Bai Cezin everything that had happened. "I'm so grateful that our love, built over all these years, wasn't destroyed by a few rumors." She took Zushan's hand and said to him with deep emotion, "Husband, this is already the 2nd lifetime we've been married." But Bai Cezin was eventually discovered by the Bai family. The master of the Bai household flew into a rage and declared, "Damn it! That disgraceful scourge should have stayed dead." She left this root of calamity behind to bring us ruin. Now that the second concubine has died, I will absolutely not let her remain in this world. Every day she lives is another day of shame for our Bai family. The deputy steward said the young lady didn't want to die before. Now that she has a child, she certainly doesn't want to die anymore. The Bai family patriarch said they should make her out to be even more of a monster. Then just lock her away somewhere completely cut off from everyone. Old Fahai said there's a pagoda called Leafing by the West Lake. Master, you could put up notices saying you're suppressing a demon. This pagoda will remain closed to the public from now on. Yes, for the garrison commander of Hangzhou, sealing off a single pagoda would be as easy as turning over his hand. And he chose to do it on the very day Zushan and Bai Sisian were holding the celebration banquet for their newborn child. Suddenly, a servant rushed in and said that old monk Fahai was at the gate, demanding to see them about something urgent. Before the couple could even react, Fahai barged right in and produced an ornate box. The past came flooding back. That vial of red, crowned crane poison. Bai Sisian was utterly broken. The crowd outside was huge, buzzing with whispers. He really is a monster, they murmured. The monster is clearly afraid. Because that old monk brought the magic tool to subdue demons, taken very box. Thinking of her father, the garrison commander of Hangzhou, Bai Sisian knew she would never find peace, no matter where she went. Her father would never forgive her. He might even harm Zushan, harm their child, and harm Zushan's sister as well. Old Fahai told her, "There is a place of quiet solitude. You must enter it and cut off all contact with the outside world." The garrison commander of Hangzhou joined forces with the He monk to subdue the demon. Onlookers buzzed with excitement. "Venerable monk, I beg you, spare my wife," Zushan pleaded with Fahai. His sister, Zhu Zhaorong, added her own desperate appeal. "Please, let my brother and his wife go. Their child is still so young." The day she entered the pagoda, the whole city was buzzing. A great monk subduing a demon, every disaster, every drought. Every bit of misfortune could now be blamed on this monster. Locking her away in the pagoda was seen as an act of mercy, sparing her life. 20 years later, her son Zhu Minzhou achieved the highest rank in the imperial examinations, becoming the #1 scholar. Bai Sisian was finally to be released from Leifang Pagoda to reunite with her family. But would it really be that simple? That dilapidated old pagoda had been her prison for decades. The lead actress is Chen Yanyan, who along with Butterfly Wu, Ruan Lingyu, Wang Erming and others, was known as one of the 8 stars of the Republican era. Since this is a film from that period, a lot has been lost in its preservation. Some scenes are damaged, with only fragments remaining. But this is the only known copy in the entire country, making it incredibly precious. We can even see performances from a temple fair of that time, as well as the simple, ancient landscapes of Suzhou and Hangzhou in the Republican period. In this version of the legend of the White Snake, Bai Sisian isn't a powerful supernatural being. She and Zushan are both ordinary humans, and being human means feeling fear, worry, and all the flaws that come with human nature. Even in modern society, who would marry someone without hesitation if they refused to share anything about their past? And even after marriage, he kept his promise not to pry into her past. Of course, he had his moments of doubt. But whenever he thought of the bond he shared with his wife, he would reaffirm his choice to stand by her. Even when he was taken to court, he didn't reveal a single thing about her. He even warned her ahead of time, afraid the officers might startle her. He was a man who stayed true to both loyalty and love. Later, Zushan